So we have looked at different models of governance. Now let us link these model of governance or governance, good governance, to social policy. So governance is a recent phenomenon. So as we discussed in the previous few modules, governance has become more and more fashionable since the late 80s or early 90s. Before that, the idea of governance was not there, or if it was present, it was not very popular. So it was the government which was making the decisions, and governance was thought of as part of the government. It was only in the late 80s and early 90s that we come to the experts explained that governance is much more than the government, and now it's the business and the private sector and the third sector, which is a CSO, the civil society organization, that come together and make the decisions. So how governance and social policies are linked? So Daly and Fitzpatrick have looked at these linkages, and they have come up with advantages and disadvantages of applying the governance models. So let's first discuss the advantages of applying governance models to social policies. So first advantage, according to these two scholars, is it provides an overarching framework to explain the present. So you get to you have a framework to explain how or why a certain social policy was made, or why a specific decision was taken at a certain point in time. So the governance models help you to understand that. For example, in the 70s, you would argue that there was the hierarchical model applicable. So at that time, if a decision was made, it was primarily due to the minister or the senior bureaucrats. Currently, if you look at different networks or partnership models, you may argue that a certain decision was made because a certain civil society organization was so strong and had such a brilliant campaign for a decision that that decision was implemented. So the governance models help us to explain the social policies. And of course, the governance model focuses on policy making. So rather than looking at other things, they focus on why policies are made or why policies are not made, how decisions are taken. It identifies the different levels of decision making. So where the decision was made, whether it was made locally, whether it was made regionally, or at the national level, or the supranational level or international level. So in case of, for example, Britain, we have the European Union. So European Union decided to come up with rules and regulations which are then implemented in Britain. In case of Pakistan, we can look at different agreements which we have signed. For example, WTO. So that as we have signed the WTO or World Trade Organization, we follow their rules. So decisions are not made by us, by over leaders, by over politicians, by over senior bureaucrats. Decisions are made but somewhere else, Geneva or Tokyo or Washington DC. And governance models helps us to come up with that. So governance models also help us understanding how social policy develops and how welfare is generated. It helps us to locate power. So where is the power located? Whether the power is located locally, regionally, with this politician or that bureaucrat or that businessman. So it helps us to understand what is happening. And then this, of course, it explicates the changing role of state as we move forward. So what are the disadvantages? So one of the key disadvantages is that the governance models focus on the political rather than the social. So we are thinking of social policies are for the people, for the society. So we think of social policies to benefit the society. So why a certain social policy is made, we think of to make all the Pakistanis equal, to reduce poverty. But governance models focus on the power or the political relationship. So they will look at why this prime minister or chief minister or minister decided to increase the minimum wage. So they are not looking at the poor people, they are looking at the ministers who are deciding it. So it's people versus power. And then, of course, the second concern is that now there are experts in governance, and they have taken over from people who are experts in social policies. So we don't have experts in education deciding about education policies, or experts of health deciding about health policies. We have experts in governance deciding about health and education policies. Finally, the focus on governance, and many people argue, has led to a new kind of imperialism. So World Bank and IMF and Asian Development Bank all are arguing for good governance, and they are interfering in the all kind of affairs of developing countries and forcing them to do things which they don't want to do on the basis of good governance. That you should do this because it's good governance, you should do that because of good governance. So good governance, rather than giving power to the local people, had taken power from the local people. Thank you.